On August 21st, 1955, two teenagers from Chicago boarded a train and traveled south to visit family in Mississippi.
We was going down there to pick some kiting because I never picked any kiting before. And I was looking forward to do that because I had told my mother that I could pick 200 pounds. And she told me I couldn't, So we was going down there to look for a good time,
For more than a year, racial tensions in the South had been higher than usual, since the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Education that segregated schools were unconstitutional. The decision touched a raw nerve in the white South, and many organized to preserve white supremacy. For years, groups like the Ku Klux Klan practiced terrorism. Despite national black protests, public murders of blacks were common, and the mobs who committed them went unpunished. In the previous 70 years, there had been more than 500 documented lynchings in Mississippi alone. Coming from Chicago, Curtis Jones and his cousin Emmitt Till had little sense of the world they were entering when they arrived in Money, Mississippi.
Emmitt Till was, at the time, he was 14 years old, had just graduated out of grammar school. He had some picture of some white kids that he had graduated from. That was, female and male. So he told the boys down there, hey, you got around this store? This must have been around about maybe 10 to 12, youngsters around there, that the girls was his girlfriend, So one of the local boys said, hey, there's a girl in that store there, so I bet you want to go in there and talk to her, So he went in there to, get some candy. So when he was leaving out the store, after buying the candy, he told us, said, bye, baby. And the next thing I knew, one of the boys came up to me and say, man, you got a crazy cousin. He just went in there and said bye to that white woman. And that's when this man I was playing checker with, this older man, I guess he must have been around about 60 or 70, he jumped straight up and said, boy, y'all about to get out of here, that lady come out of that store and blow y'all brains out.
This is Mose Wright. I am the uncle of Emmitt Louis Till. Sunday morning about 2:30, someone called at the door. And I said, who is it? And he said, this is Mr. Bryant. I want to talk with you and the boy. And when I opened the door, there was a man standing with a pistol in one hand and a flashlight in the other hand. And he asked me, did I have two boys there from Chicago? I told him I have. And he said, I want the boy that done all that talk. They marched him to the car, and they asked someone there, this is the right boy? And the answer was, he is. And they drove toward Money.
4 days later, Emmitt Till's body was found in the Tallahatchie River.
The body was so badly damaged that we couldn't hardly just tell who he was, but he happened to have on a ring with his initials, and that cleared it up.
The body was shipped home, back north to Chicago, where Mamie Till Bradley insisted on an open casket funeral. So all the world can see, she said, what they did to my boy.
Oh, pilgrim of sorrow, I'm left in this old wide world.
Jet magazine showed Till's corpse, beaten, mutilated, shot through the head. And An entire generation of young black people would remember the horror of that photo.
No, for tomorrow.
Roy Bryant, husband of the woman in the store, and J.W. Milam, her brother-in-law, were arrested for the murder of Emmitt Till. The trial was held in nearby Sumner, Mississippi. Black organizations like the NAACP and the Black Press worked especially hard to keep the case in the news, to make an example of Southern racism for the world.
I had covered the courts in many areas of this country, but the Till case was unbelievable. I mean, I just didn't get the sense of being in a courtroom. It was, first place, segregated. The black press sat at a bridge table far off from the court, and the boy's mother came down. They sat her there at the bridge table with us.
What do you intend to do here today?
To answer any questions that the attorneys might ask me to answer. To the
How
best.
do you think you could possibly be a help to them?
I don't know. I mean, just by answering whatever questions that they ask me.
I see. Do you have any evidence bearing on this case?
I do know that this is my son.
The defense argued that the body found tied to the cotton gin fan in the river was so disfigured that it could not be identified as Emmitt Till. The trial took 5 long, hot days. The prosecution's star witness was Till's uncle, Mose Wright, who testified despite threats to his life.
He was called upon to, could he see anybody in the courtroom, identify anybody in that courtroom that had come to his house that night and got the Emmitt Till out. He stood up, and there was a tension in the courtroom. And he says, in his broken language, "Dar he."
Dar he, there he is.
I really didn't realize how brave my grandfather Mose Wright was, you know. But after I got older, I realized that he was a brave man. He was a mighty brave man to travel back down there, you know, among all those hostile peoples and testify and get him up in court and point his finger at a white man and accuse him of murder.
As the trial ended, a defense lawyer told the jury he was, quote, "sure every last Anglo-Saxon one of you has the courage to free these men." It took the jury an hour to find the men not guilty. Months later, for a fee of $4,000, Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam told their story to reporter William Bradford Huey.
Milam was startled at the belligerent attitude, or the fact that young Till didn't appear to be afraid of him. Now, he'd gone and gotten him out of bed and had him in the back of a truck, and young Till never realized the danger he was in. I'm quite sure that he never thought these two men would kill him. And, or maybe he's just in such a strange environment, he just doesn't know what he's up against. And it seems, to a rational mind today, it seems impossible that they could have killed him. But J.W. Milam looked up at me and said, well, when he told me about this white girl he had, he says, my friend, that's what this war is about down here now. He says, that's what we got to fight to protect. And he says, I just looked at him and I said, boy, you ain't gonna never see the sun come up again.
I believe that the whole United States is mourning with me. And if the death of my son can mean something to the other unfortunate people all over the world, then for him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
The fact that Emmitt Till, a young black man, could be found floating down the river in Mississippi, as indeed many had been done over the years, just set in concrete the determination of people to move forward.
Like all cities in the South, Montgomery, Alabama had segregated buses. In interstate buses like this one, and in city buses, the whites sat in the front, the blacks in back. If more whites got on, the blacks had to give them the middle and back seats too. 3 months after the Till trial, Rosa Parks, a secretary for the NAACP, was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus to a white passenger.
And when the policeman approached me, one of them spoke and asked me if the driver had asked me to stand. I said, yes. He said, well, why don't you stand up? I said, I don't think I should have to stand up. And I asked him, I said, why do you push us around? He said, I do not know, but the law is a law and you're under arrest.
There had been arrest before. The black community was well organized and was now ready to respond. Leaders called for a boycott of city buses.
The people wanted to continue that boycott. They had been touched by the persecution, the humiliation that many of them had endured on buses, and they voted for it unanimously, and that meant thousands of people.
At regular mass rallies, the community constantly renewed its strength through song, prayer, and the encouragement of its ministers.
This show is your show. Not only is this show the show of Negroes in Montgomery, but this is the show of Negroes all over America.
The man they elected to help lead them was a new preacher in town, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He was 26 years old.
We are not wrong in what we are doing. If we are wrong, the Supreme Court of this nation is wrong. If we are wrong, the Constitution of the United States is wrong. If we are wrong, God Almighty is wrong.
Before the boycott, 2/3 of the bus riders were black. After December 5th, there were almost no blacks at the segregated bus stops or on the buses. Many wondered how long would it take.
We thought that you could just shame America. So now, America, look at your promises and look at how you're treating your poor Negro citizens. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. But you know, segregate, you can't shame segregation. You can't, rattlesnakes don't commit suicide.
Month after month, the boycott continued. A wave of violence began. Shots were fired at city buses. Bombs were thrown at the homes of black boycott leaders, including Dr. King's.
Are you afraid?
No, I'm not. My attitude is that this is a great cause. It is a great issue that we are confronted with. And I have always felt that ultimately along the way of life, an individual must stand up and be counted and be willing to face the consequences, whatever they are. And if he is filled with fear, he cannot do it.
The boycotters rode black taxis. They organized a community carpool system. Mostly, they walked. After 11 months, it was the United States Supreme Court that finally broke the deadlock. The court ruled unanimously that Montgomery's bus segregation was unconstitutional.
The decision rendered by the Supreme Court yesterday was a victory. Yeah. But it wasn't a victory for colored folks. Don't make that victory that small. It wasn't a victory for 50,000 Negroes of Montgomery. It wasn't merely a victory for 16 million Negroes of America. That was a victory for justice.
We had won self-respect. And if you have never had the feeling to feel that this is not the other man's country and you are an alien in it, but that this is your country too, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But it is a hilarious feeling that just goes all over you, that makes you feel that America is a great country and we're going to do more to make it greater.
Oh, Lord, what a beautiful city.